Good evening and welcome everyone to Understanding Guilt and Shame. We have to understand that these two are distinct emotions. We do speak of them as together, and yes, they do come together 99% of the time, not always. But they are different. They do have similarities, but they are different. And we'll understand these differences as we go along. Both are universal emotions. There is no person in the world who has never felt a sense of guilt or who has never felt a sense of shame. In fact, if you do not feel these emotions at all, there is something very, very psychologically wrong with you, right? So a person who is like a sociopath, right, would not feel guilt and not feel shame. But we're not looking at those extreme persons who are few and far between. We're looking at all of us in the average middle spectrum who feel guilt, who feel shame at some point in our lives or the other. For some of us, this guilt, this shame continues to determine our lives and our relationships and our successes and our failures. And for others, the guilt and shame is short-lived, and we tend to kind of be able to keep it on a back burner if we have not resolved it. But both of these are known as self-conscious emotions. Now, what does self-conscious mean? Self-conscious means that you overthink about something that you have done or about some aspect of yourself which you believe is not up to the mark. And that is what self-conscious is. And overthinking. So you do not let go of that particular thought. So the first thing we need to understand about guilt and shame is that it happens as a recurrent thought over and over and over again in our minds. As human beings, we are quite a marvelous breed. Our bodies, our emotions, our psyches can live with just about any situation. And even a thought, a recurring thought of guilt and shame, when it exists long enough within us, even though it's constantly there in the back of our minds, we can almost forget about it till, of course, there is a large enough trigger which brings it to the forefront. Psychologists have defined these two emotions as negative states that occur in response to a transgression or a shortcoming. This definition is extremely important. We all know that guilt and shame are negative. We don't need to discuss that. We've all experienced their negativity. We've all experienced their toxicity. But let's understand these two words, transgression and shortcoming. And this is where the main difference lies between guilt and shame. You see, guilt comes up as an emotion when you have done something which you know is wrong, or when you have not done something which you know is right. As soon as we use the words right and wrong, we are looking at the presence of an internal value system. Now, this internal value system is an extremely essential part of our healing process. And it is this internal value system that actually ensures that you and I are, in fact, not highly psychologically impaired, that we do have a healthy internal value system within us. So guilt, I'm repeating, comes from a transgression, something that I have done which I judge as wrong, and or something which I have not done which I judge as right. Another aspect of this internal value system is that it is always based upon a value system that we have grown up with. So our internal value systems begin at a very, very young age. When our inner child is being formed, right, it is at this time that we are also creating an internal value system. Our parents and primary caregivers are, of course, the ones who are most responsible at that age for the establishment of this internal value system. When we start going to school, right, it is the school environment, the teachers present there, and also the students, the peer group, that will also become contributors to this internal value system. As we grow older, the books that we read, the newspapers that we read, the television programs that we watch, all of these become contributors to our internal value system. Very often we are unaware of where this internal value system comes from. But when we go down to the nitty-gritty and we reappraise and review this internal value system, we are surprised to find that a large part of this internal value system is not your own at all. You've been influenced by so many different external forces. And it is this that creates the guilt. If you have been brought up in an extremely strict, conservative, traditional family environment, which looked down upon girls who wore mini skirts or who wore halters or strapless tops, but as you grow up and you move out of that family environment, you start wearing these clothes that appeal to you. Each time you put that on, there is a guilt. You may not even recognize it because you're kind of pushing it down. You're learning to live with that guilt. But there is a guilt. Till you understand that this value system, which defines girls as immoral because of what they wear, is not your value system, but the value system of your very strict family, you can then start moving away from that value system. You can then start cutting your ties with that value system and establishing a new value system that is in alignment with who you are. Let's go to shame. Shame comes not from a transgression. Shame is not external oriented. Shame is internal oriented. So shame arises as an emotion because you believe that you have a shortcoming. Again, where does this belief stem from? Remember one thing, friends. Scientists, psychologists have established that guilt can be felt as early as the age of 3 years. And shame can be felt, and you might be very surprised to hear this, I certainly was. Shame can be felt as early as 15 months. Now, whether it's 15 months or 3 years, you and I both know that we do not have the ability to establish an internal value system or an internal belief system of our own at that age. As soon as we realize this age factor, we realize one very, very crucial aspect of guilt and shame, and that is, it is based upon what we have internalized, what we have been conditioned to believe, what we have been, a value system that has been imposed upon us, all of this from an external environment. It is extremely common that even though children are brought up in a family that believes in X, Y, and Z, as the child grows, as the child turns into an adult, the child begins to disagree with the value systems, with the belief systems of the family. And though this disagreement exists, might be very strongly on an intelligent level, on a subconscious level, this value system, this belief system that you intelligently disagree with is actually very, very present within you. And this subconscious internal belief system makes you feel guilty about something you've done or not done, or makes you feel ashamed about a shortcoming that you believe you have. Now, what could this shortcoming be? It could be quite widespread. For example, and I'm going to take the really small examples, which sometimes we fail to pay attention to because they are so small. Let's assume a person grows up in a family where all the members are doctors, right? The mother's a doctor, father's a doctor, the two older siblings are doctors. This person is extremely musically inclined and has no interest in medicine, even though is intelligent enough to be a doctor if he or she wishes to. But this person follows the musical line as a career path and is judged by this intelligent family for wasting your life, doing something like music. You're part of a band. Why don't you do that as a hobby? It can be your pastime. These are all the words that you hear. Basically, what you're being told is you do not have the ability to do what we are doing. And so this becomes for you a shortcoming, that I do not have the same interests as the family. even though you love being a musician, in your subconscious, you're saying, I'm just a musician. I'm not a doctor. And this constant subconscious reiteration brings about shame, which builds up as a very negative emotion in your body. Let's take another aspect. Your elder brother is a soccer jock and is in the national soccer team, whereas the younger brother is small of stature, is weak, is very creative, but is often teased for being girlish because he is creative. Once again, there is a shame that arises in you because you are not your brother who everyone looks up to and everyone is praising and talking about. So you begin to feel, this is who I am and I am lacking in something. All of these are conditioned beliefs. These are internalized beliefs because of what we experience when we are very, very young. You might wonder, why would a child of 15 months feel a sense of shame? Now, I don't know any client who's had this experience at 15 months, but I do know of someone who had this experience as far back as she can remember, from the age of 3. Now, she does not remember beyond that. So it could have happened way beyond that. A parent of hers would play with her, touching her sexual parts in the most inappropriate manner. This is as far back as 3 when she remembered, and it went on for a number of years. The sense of shame started from that first memory of this event happening to her. Such a sense of shame. At that age of 3, the child has not been taught good touch, bad touch. But you know, guys, no one really needs to teach us. Intrinsically, we know good touch, bad touch. And so this deep sense of shame lived on with her till she was about 60 when she started coming to me. Now, this is what I'm talking about. At the age of 15 months too, that babe can feel shame because our DNA is aware of right and wrong, of good and bad. Now, guilt needs to be healed by self-forgiveness and self-acceptance. Shame can only be healed by developing self-worth. Where there is shame, there is a tremendous feeling of worthlessness. So you might be aware that you do not have self-worth or self-esteem. But you may not have been aware that this lack of self-worth comes from a deep-set shame. it is important to identify the source of that shame. And please never judge someone else's shame as trivial. A short person living in a society that believes that tall is beautiful can feel a deep sense of shame. A dark-skinned girl living in a country like India, where fair is looked upon as some God-given gift, can most certainly feel a deep sense of shame. So never trivialize either your shame or someone else's shame. It is very difficult to live with guilt and shame. But somehow we manage as human beings. Shame is almost always suppressed and pushed down. Guilt, on the other hand, behaves in a rather strange manner. There are many who will feel guilty, who will apologize, who will for a short time appear to be making an effort to change, but very soon go back to their old patterns. Why? Does it mean that this guilt that they felt is false? Does it mean that the apology is a lie? Not at all. The guilt is genuine. The apology is a true apology. But it is easier to live with guilt and make amends for your actions than it is to fundamentally change your behavior. And this, friends, applies to us all. To change our behavior fundamentally, which means you completely shift tracks. You change your behavior pattern at every level of your consciousness. This takes time and effort, certainly, but it needs a strength of intention that very few are able to command of themselves. And so it is much easier to continue that circle of doing something, saying sorry, going back to the ways. When does this cycle break? When you realize that the opposite person is now not accepting your make-up behavior. When the opposite person stops accepting this make-up behavior, because that person knows for a fact that you haven't really changed, that is the trigger that most need to make the shift in themselves. But in some, even this is not a strong enough trigger. When the other person stops accepting your amends, what you actually then do instead of changing is to get angry and start blaming the other person, calling them mean, calling them harsh, calling them insensitive, calling them egoistic, a whole lot of labels that can be assigned to that person who is not accepting your makeup behavior. Please look at yourselves. Are you caught in this trap of doing something, genuinely feeling the guilt, genuinely saying sorry, but not having the strength of character, not having the will of intention to fundamentally change your behavior? If you are caught in this cycle, take help, seek help of a friend, of a counselor, of a therapist, but shift out of this cycle. Very unhealthy, and it can only cause loss of relationships. Now, when I've spoken about guilt as being genuine, it immediately follows that there are these two emotions, guilt and shame, but more specifically guilt, is actually a very healthy emotion up to a point. What guilt can do is to help you to create for yourself personal and social regulators which bring into balance your needs and the needs of someone else. That kind of guilt, which is healthy, is very often termed as regret. You regret what you have done, and this regret makes you aware of how you can create a healthier balance in your life when another similar situation comes your way. 2, this healthy guilt is actually the first step towards healing yourself. When I do something and I am regretting my action or my words, right? And that guilt is also accompanied by shame, because I realize a shortcoming within me, a weakness within me, a flaw within me, which has made me act in a certain way, then I can use this awareness as my first step towards healing. So, guilt and shame, when used in a healthy manner, can actually repair my relationships instead of breaking them apart. It turns us into beings who are sensitive to the needs of others and stops us from being purely self-absorbed. Up to this point, guilt can be very healthy. As I said, remember, healthy guilt is known as regret. When does regret turn to unhealthy guilt? When I am caught in self-sabotage and self-judgment. When I indulge in self-negation and self-sacrifice. when I think I am very, very small, very, very bad, very, very whatever as compared to everyone else. With these crippling self-judgments and self-sabotaging behaviors, we face problems in our relationships, we face problems at work, we are unable to really be happy in life. But what is more important than all of that is we stop being genuine and authentic. We live behind masks. Now, why am I living behind these masks? A, because I don't want anyone to know that I have done this horrible thing. And B, because I'm trying to hide my shortcomings. This inauthentic behavior sometimes continues for so many years that the person stops knowing who they really are. And the hypocrisy becomes a part of their beingness, and they are hypocritical without ever meaning to be hypocritical, because they do not have a clear sense of their identity. When I don't know who I am, how can I chart out a life that is meaningful, successful, healthy, and happy? Because I don't know who I am. When you realize that you are living behind masks, step back again, seek the help of someone who you can trust, and understand what it is that you are trying to hide. Along with these masks come lies. In order to hide from others an action that I am not proud of, in order to hide from others a weakness or a flaw that I believe others will judge me for, you begin to tell lies. There is another very common behavior pattern of a person who is ashamed or guilty. They tend to destroy all evidence that can point towards them. Now, we are not looking at evidence which the police will be interested in. We are looking at small things. I remember asking someone, don't you remember writing these messages on WhatsApp? And she turns around and says, no, I would delete all the messages every night. Why would you delete all the messages every night if you are talking to a person every single day? We don't delete all our messages with our dearest friends every night, do we? So these kind of behavior patterns are very significant. That person may not even be aware of what they have done, or not, sorry, of why they have done what they have done. But this destroying of evidence is extremely common when someone is harboring guilt and shame. Another aspect of keeping this guilt and shame within you is that it becomes such a heavy burden to bear internally that the person turns to substance abuse. And then it could be alcohol, tobacco, drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, it could be food, it could be sex. But there are addictions and substance abuse that come up because you are trying to live with this huge burden within you. And that substance abuse and that addiction, for a short amount of time, is giving you the permission to forget about the burden. When it doesn't work, when substance abuse and addictions just don't work, and they do stop working after a while, that person goes into depression. And very, very often begins to think of ways to end their lives because they can't live anymore with this guilt and shame. If you see someone going through this, explain to them gently that their life is worth living and that this inner burden that they are carrying is not as vile as they believe it is. You see, the more we suppress the guilt and shame, the more we hide from it, the heavier it gets, but also the uglier it seems to get. And though it might actually have arisen from something that is smaller, much smaller than what they've made it out to be now, as the years go by, this begins to take on an identity almost all of its own. And instead of you being responsible for your words and actions, it is this identity within you that is responsible for that. So it completely takes you over. It colors your personality. It darkens your thoughts, and it creates conflicts in all areas of your life. Very, very, very often you will find that you might have done this yourself, right? And you might have seen it in others. Self-punishment. You see, when we do something wrong, our internal value system knows that you've done something wrong. As soon as that awareness creeps in, the first reaction of all human beings is wanting to hide from that. You want to ensure that no one knows about it. Please understand that this guilt is not reliant upon whether anyone knows or doesn't know. The guilt comes out of knowing that you've done something wrong. Once you know that, then you don't want anyone else to know of it. But deep within us is a conditioned belief that wrong will be punished. So you know, your subconscious knows that either someone else is going to punish you for that, or God is going to punish you, because that is such a deeply held belief in so many. All of this happens at a subconscious step. But because we know that punishment will follow, in order to stop that punishment from coming to us, what we do is punish ourselves. And therefore, we punish ourselves by ensuring that we do not have happiness in our relationships, ensuring that success does not come to us, ensuring that our health suffers. Now you will say, Elle, what does that mean, ensuring? Self-punishment and the need for self-punishment creates within us an energy that is emitted out. This energy is recognized by the universe that brings to you your situations in life. In your energy space is this energy of self-punishment. The universe recognizes this energy and brings you the appropriate situations that will punish you. So there is no God punishing you. You are punishing yourself. And this is something I endeavor to explain to my clients. God is not punishing you by this situation, right? You are not sick because God is punishing you, but you could be sick because you are punishing yourself. These aspects of self-punishment are known as self-sabotage. There is another aspect of self-punishment which is quite frequent and not recognized. Continuing to live in an abusive relationship, continuing to be present in an environment that dishonors you, disrespects you, humiliates you, insults you, is a form of self-punishment. Now, when you have this kind of self-punishment, you find it very difficult to get out of that situation and find happiness for yourself. Another thing that guilt makes us believe very falsely is that I am in control. Let me give you an example of this. Let's assume I'm on a diet. On a certain day, I have this huge bowl of ice cream, all slathered with cream, knowing full well that this is not permitted in my diet, not even on a cheat day. So I have that bowl of ice cream and I begin to feel guilty with the first bite. In fact, I start beginning to feel guilty even before I take that bite. Now that guilt makes me feel, oh, you know what? I am in control. I can stop whenever I want. But what happens is that you finish that bowl of ice cream and then you almost always say, now I've had one bowl, let me have another one. So it makes you erroneously believe that you are in control when you are not in control. In fact, that second bowl of ice cream is your self-punishment. But you are not aware of that. You are punishing yourself by having a second bowl of ice cream, knowing full well that it is going to harm you. So you can see how convoluted this whole cycle of self-punishment and control is. In order to escape from this cycle, guilt makes us turn our attention outwards. How do we do that? By blaming someone else. You might have faced this situation that a person accuses you of doing something which actually they are doing. But they do not wish to recognize that. So they blame you and say that you are doing that. You are shouting. You are lying. You do not understand me. You do not wish to understand me. In fact, that's exactly what they are doing. But their guilt is so large that they are unable to see this in themselves on a conscious level, even though at a subconscious level, they know it completely. But in order to run away from that subconscious knowingness, they begin to blame others, in the hope that when I blame others, my guilt will be reduced. But the irony is that the guilt is not reduced. In fact, the shame increases, because now I not only know that I have done something wrong, but now I also know that I have blamed someone incorrectly. And I also know that I do not have the courage within me to be honest with myself. So now there is extra guilt and extra shame. And then, like that rat in the laboratory wheel, that extra guilt and extra shame makes me blame you even more. And the cycle continues. Sometimes, instead of blaming others, there is a game that people play. There is a game that all of us play from time to time. And that is not you are at fault, but I am at fault. In any situation, you will take on the burden and say, it was my fault. I did something wrong. Now, blaming yourself constantly is certainly not the same thing as self-responsibility. Blame comes from a position of needing retribution. Blame results in punishment. Self-responsibility results in transformation. So the two are entirely different. I have seen many times, not always, but a significant number of times, when a person has this need to punish self, somewhere in their childhood, most likely, there are clear evidences of child abuse. That child abuse could be sexual, could be emotional, could be physical. That child who is abused believes that this world of mine that consists of my mother, my father, my siblings, my grandparents, my caregivers, cannot be a wrong world. That world is right. They are all older than me, they are wiser than me, and they're certainly better than me. So there has to be something wrong with me. If my father is hitting me, it means there's something wrong with me. And this belief, there is something wrong with me, continues to live in that child as a teenager, as an adult, and in every relationship, in every situation. That inner child will come from this belief, there is something wrong with me, it is my fault, and therefore the guilt continues to grow. Now, let's move on to the shame aspect that is attached to all of this guilt. Guilt wears a mask. Shame wants to avoid all relationships entirely. So, what shame will do is stop you from entering into committed relationships. What shame will do is stop you from entering into any meaningful interaction with people. What shame will do is to ensure that you move into relationships that are superficial and just on the surface, because shame refuses to allow you to get into relationships where you have to deeply connect with yourself and the other. Because when you are ashamed, going inwards is the last thing you want to do. You do not want to touch that shame because it's so raw. Another thing, what shame does is to make you appear to be either a person who has no emotion or a person who is overly sensitive. Let's understand both these aspects. Because I am not able to touch my emotions, I therefore shield myself, and I am not going to be able to show you my emotions at all. And I come across then as having no emotions. On the other hand, in order to distract you, from my true emotions, I put on a mask of being overly emotional, overly sensitive, so that the opposite person will be so distracted by all of this going on that the person will not be able to genuinely know my emotions. Why am I trying to hide? Because shame makes me feel worthless. And out of this worthlessness comes this deep need to be validated, to be approved of by others. Wayne Dyer has said something so significant, so meaningful, that I'd like to read it out to you. With everything that has happened to you, you can either feel sorry for yourself or treat what has happened as a gift. Everything is either an opportunity to grow or an obstacle to keep you from growing. You get to choose. Understand the depth of these words. You get to choose. The power lies in our hands. We get to choose whether we wish to continue to live with guilt and shame, or whether we'd like to completely resolve this and fundamentally change as a human being. What do I need to do then to change? If I take up this challenge, if I make the choice that from this moment onwards, I am not going to live with guilt, I am not going to live in shame, the words are said easy enough. But what do I have to do? The first thing you have to do is to face the guilt and face the shame. How? I have found that when I encourage my clients to talk about their guilt and shame to 4, 5, 6 people whom they trust, that becomes a far more meaningful facing the guilt, facing the shame. Because when you attempt to do it inside your head, there is a very, very good chance that you will again start playing mind games. So to face the guilt, to face the shame, choose about 5 to 6 persons whom you trust completely and talk to them. One of them could be your counselor or your therapist, your spiritual mentor, your teacher, your guide. It may be a family member, it may not be a family member. It may be a group therapy situation. The choice is yours. But to honestly face that guilt and shame, you have to find the courage to honestly express it in words, in as many words as, I am guilty because I did this. I feel the guilt of not having done this. I am ashamed of being in this way. These are the words that have to be spoken. Yes, initially it might seem very difficult because you are scared that you will be judged. But I assure you that when we make our intention to the universe that I am now starting to live a life of positive choices, the universe will ensure that you speak to those who will not only not judge you, but who will actually help you to shift your perception of yourself. And that brings me to my second point. When we face the guilt, when we face the shame, we begin to examine the true origin of that guilt and shame. Now, what would that mean? For example, that 60-year-old woman who came with this huge shroud of shame because of what a parent had done to her, had to be made to see that she had nothing to be ashamed of. The parent who is actually supposed to be the one who is the caregiver had done certain actions, had done certain things to her, which a parent should in fact protect the child from. So when you are able to see the origin and understand that this guilt and shame that you've carried with you for years is not your burden in any case. Many, many times this is not your burden. So I know a girl who is living with so much guilt because she could not stop her parents from fighting. The awareness, the understanding that the sessions brought to her, that forget her, no 9-year-old would be able to take on this responsibility of stopping marital discord, was like a chain that had come off her, a chain that had cut her free, because she had taken on this guilt that I could not bring peace in the home. And she had to be made to see, is it really possible for a 9-year-old to do that? So it's only when you talk about it that you can actually vitally examine the origin of the guilt and understand whether it genuinely is your burden to carry or not. If it is your burden to carry, speaking about the guilt and speaking about the shame will take you to the next level, will help you to accept that what is done is done. You cannot go back and undo it, right? If you have cheated, if you have lied, if you have betrayed, if you have stolen, what is done is done. Does that mean that you are saying it's okay to have done it? No. It just means that you recognize, I can't go back in time and now undo it. So I have to accept that, yes, I did that, and not try and hide from this reality. Once I accept that, I have to allow myself to talk about this in order to understand, why did I do that? What inner compulsion made me lie, made me cheat, made me betray, made me steal? What made me do that? As soon as I am aware of the what, I am also then aware of the shortcoming within me. When I am aware of the shortcomings within me, I am now ready to change my behavior fundamentally. But I cannot change my behavior till I have accepted what I have done, and if not forgiven what I have done, at least begin to say, I am ready to forgive myself. You may not yet have forgiven yourself, but at least come to a point where you are ready to forgive yourself. This readiness to forgive yourself is important. As soon as you make that genuine choice within you, what comes from your heart is the energy of empathy and compassion. Now, that empathy and compassion is not only for yourself, but it always spills over to someone else. And because you've been hiding from your guilt and shame, you realize that you have not been empathetic or compassionate with those who are doing something wrong. In order to wear that mask of I am perfect, we refuse to give empathy or compassion to those who are doing things wrong. We judge them, we blame them, we condemn them. But as soon as you are ready to forgive yourself, that empathy and compassion fills you and spills over to others as well. It is at this point that you now have to take a decision. Am I ready to apologize? Do I wish to apologize? And if yes, am I ready to apologize to that person? Now, this is another game we play. Many times, people will tell me, I apologize to that person, but see how egoistic that person is, Elle. They just said, I'm not accepting your apology. You are not apologizing to them so that they can be nice to you again. You are apologizing to them because you have seen the error of your ways. Please get your intention straight before you make that apology. An apology is not a game. It is not a tool of manipulation. An apology is not an ego instrument. There are so many who cannot apologize. Why? Because their ego will not permit. Why will their ego not permit? Because there is so much guilt and shame within them. An apology is an action that is taken by you as a recognition of your errors and as an acknowledgement to the other that you did err in some way. And that is all that it is. Do not expect that person to respond positively. If they respond positively, that's icing on the cake. But just because you desire to make an apology does not mean that that person is forced to respond positively to you. But that is not your purpose. When you have apologized, if you wish to apologize, then let it go. Let it go. It happened. You've learned from it. You've grown from it. You've become empathetic. You've become understanding. You've become tolerant. You've become a better human being. Now let it go. If you continue to dwell in that past, it means that you have not really shifted. You want to continue to live in that guilt and shame. Again, you'll ask me, why would someone want to continue living in that guilt and shame? I'm going to draw your mind to what we discussed earlier, self-punishment. You want to continue to live in guilt and shame because you want to continue to punish yourself, because you want to ensure that the success, the happiness, the joy, and the health that you deserve, you will not get because you have done this wrong deed, or because you have this shortcoming. So let it go. There is this beautiful saying, let go, let God, which means let go of the past and let the divine come in. But which divine is this? Not some divine on the external, the divine who is you. Let that divine come in. Let that divine come into your life. Once you have done that, now you're ready to look at the shame aspect of this. Because remember, where there is guilt, there is shame. So now you're ready to address the shame. The first acknowledgement that you must make is that you feel worthless. You feel inferior. In some way or the other, you feel inferior. You feel this sense of shame because I'm fat, I'm short, I'm tall, I'm black, I'm white, I'm ugly, I'm disabled. I belong to this community because I tell lies, because I don't know, whatever, because I'm weak. There are so many reasons why we feel worthless. Address all those reasons. Please remember, there's always more than one. And some of them will be physical because our world is like that. Because our world is like that. So some of them will be physical. It will be about you, your body, what you own, what you have, your education, your community, your religion, all of that. And some of them will be about what you feel internally. When you address the shame, you have to address all of these aspects. Please remember, this is a slow process. Don't try and rush it, because if you try and rush it, you will actually not have achieved any result. Let's discuss some of these lies we tell ourselves, which we allow society to make us tell ourselves. And we then feel guilty. The first lie is, I must be perfect. If you have that belief, I must be perfect, I should be perfect, please look within. You are living a life in shame. Because the truth is, none of us is this so-called perfect, because this perfection that you are running after does not exist. It doesn't exist. The soul is already perfect. The personality can never be perfect. Let's accept these two truths. The soul is already perfect. The personality can never be perfect. You can strive to work upon your flaws. Certainly, commendable. But when you do fail, just dust yourself off and walk on without the guilt of that failure. So this first lie is this lie that we tell ourselves, I should be perfect. But this lie we tell others as well. And we impose this lie on others, on our children, on our friends, on society, on our partners, on our peer group. We impose this on others. We demand perfection from them. And when they do not stand up to our norms, we condemn them. So let's stop telling ourselves this lie, I must be perfect, I should be perfect. It's a lie. From that lie comes a lot of shame. And with that shame comes worthlessness and inferiority. The next lie, everyone must approve of me. That's a lie. It's a lie you are telling yourself. That inner voice is telling you a lie. There will be people who will disapprove of you. If you do X, there will be one group that will approve and one group that will not approve. When you do Y, this group will approve and that group will not approve. If you are constantly living your life with this lie, everyone must approve of me, you will constantly live in guilt, because one person, one group will always make you feel you've done something wrong. Instead of this lie that everyone must approve, replace it with the truth. I must approve of what I do. I must approve. When you come to that stage of self-worth and self-responsibility, I must approve, you will find that your burden of guilt and shame becomes less and less and less. The third lie, mistakes are bad. They show me off in a bad light. I must never make mistakes. It comes from that lie of I must be perfect. Mistakes are not bad. In fact, mistakes are the stepping stones to our growth. If with every mistake you create another mask to hide your guilt, you move away even more from people in order to hide your shame, you are not learning from that mistake, which means you will make that mistake again and again and again and again. And B, you've lost a beautiful opportunity for growth. When you were in school and you made mistakes, did you not learn the right way from those mistakes? So the vital lessons that you learned, did they not come from the mistakes that you made? But you see, this is where that internal value system becomes flawed. Even as a child of barely 1 year old, parents are constantly attempting to tell the child that this is the wrong way of doing something. As happens very often when I'm going to do a seminar or a workshop, the universe will bring something to me to kind of go, aha. And this morning on Facebook, I saw a lovely 1 minute or maybe even less than a minute heartwarming video which the mother has shot of her maybe 1 year old or 1.5 year old toddler. He is eating an ice cream cone. Yes. So he's sitting on the floor with the cone in his hand. And he holds his little foot and puts that into the cone and then licks the foot and eats the ice cream. And then does that repeatedly. And the mother had captioned the video, well, this is another way, I guess. Now, this is what I mean about positive conditioning. Giving the child the right to experiment. Not being like most mothers and saying, that's not the right way to eat an ice cream. You don't put your foot into the ice cream. As soon as you tell a child, this is wrong, the child begins to stop experimenting. The child begins to stop growing. The child only depends on others. And the child believes mistakes are bad. Not only do the parents do this to the child, but the teachers most definitely do this to all the children in school. Which teacher goes up to a child and says, you know, I'm so happy you've made this mistake. Now, why don't we both learn together? You teach me and I'll teach you. Instead, what will the teacher say? That's such a silly mistake. How many times do you have to be taught this? So we grow up as adults believing, I must be perfect. Mistakes are bad. The third lie of shame. And every time you make a mistake, a genuine mistake, the shame is felt so deeply by you. The fourth lie of shame. Others are better than I. Because you are aware of your shortcomings and always you see that the grass is greener on the other side, and so you believe others are better than you. These 4 lies of shame have to be addressed, and they have to change into positive affirmations, into positive reiterations, into positive statements for you. Only then can you make positive life choices. How will you be positive? Yes, I do understand. Because remember, I have worked with a lot of my own shame and my own guilt. So I do understand how difficult it is to be positive when this burden of guilt and shame is very heavy inside of you. Here are just a few pointers, some things that I did for myself, which worked, which I'm sharing with you. Every day, ask yourself, what is the one thing I have done in my life to make a positive change in my life? What is the one thing that I have done? And every day, just look for one thing. It could be, I moved cities. I moved this from one job to another. I decided to get married to this person. I decided to have a child. Anything. What is the one thing that I have done which has changed my life and made it more positive? Second, ask yourself, what is the one thing that I have done to help someone? Don't be in a hurry to make a list on the first day. I want you to be aware of only one thing in a day. Because remember, this is going to be a long process. What is the one thing that I have done to help someone else? Don't forget the small things, like helping the old lady to carry her groceries while she crossed the road. Don't forget those small things. They're very, very important. They show what a considerate person you are. Next, what is the one thing that I am truly grateful for? What is the one thing that I'm truly grateful for? Again, don't forget the small things. Example, I'm truly grateful for the fact that even though there was a lockdown, I got milk at my doorstep every day. So don't forget the small things. We tend to only look for the big things when there are so many small enriching factors in our life. Next, at the end of each day, recognize all your positive contributions and efforts of that day. Recognize all your positive contributions and efforts of that day. Next, with the help of someone, set some goals for yourself which you can achieve. Now, don't make these goals unattainable, right? For example, if you like to cook, your goal should not be that in 3 months, I'll make a Michelin star level meal for my family. No. Your goal could be that I'll make round and soft and fluffy rotis. So make goals that are attainable. When you attain those goals, recognize your achievement and remember to say, well done to yourself. And the most important of all, be patient. This is a long journey. I started on this journey many, many, many years ago. And I still sometimes find myself slipping into guilt and shame. And I have to pull myself back again. So be patient with yourself, knowing that every day, every week, every month, and every year, it will only get easier. The burden will get lighter, and the happiness and the inner strength will be greater. One more thing you have to do is ask your body, physical body, Where is my guilt and where is my shame located? Make it two separate exercises, two separate questions. Where is my guilt located? Where is my shame located? You might find that initially you're not able to get this answer from your body. Again, persevere. Be patient. Continue to ask your body every day, where is my guilt located? Where is my shame located? One day, in the not so distant future, your body will give you an answer. How? Either you will just have a kind of a knowingness that it's in this part of the body, or the body will give you a twinge, or it might send a little shooting pain somewhere, or you'll just start feeling heavy, and you know that's where the guilt and the shame is located. When you know the part or parts in your body, because it could be more than one place, when you know the part or parts in your body where the guilt and shame is located, start breathing in. Put your hand very gently, if possible, on the part that holds the energy of guilt and shame. Put your hands gently and start breathing into that part of your body, as though you are sending this lovely breath, the divine prana, into that part of your body. And as you breathe in, keep saying, I love you. I love you. And as you breathe out, say, I let go and I let God in. I let go and I let God in. This should be a part of everyone's daily exercise for even just 2 or 3 minutes. We are unaware of how much ill health we suffer from because of the guilt, because of the shame, because of the self-punishment. Sometimes we believe that we are falling and breaking a bone by random chance. I have found that on occasion, when the client and I have both looked very deeply, that fall is a self-punishment. So, just because guilt and shame may not show themselves to you in a very conscious manner, doesn't mean that they don't exist. It just means that you have developed a system of suppressing them very adequately, of hiding from them. I'm going to take your questions now. One second. Is denial part of hiding the guilt? Yes, Kiran, denial is absolutely a part of hiding the guilt, because actually denial is, I am denying to myself, or I wish to deny to myself. So denial is completely a part of hiding the guilt from myself. Others are better than I. A question on this. Yes, please, Sarita, ask. What is the truth for this lie? That's a nice one, Sarita. Others are better than this. I am enough. I am as good as everyone else. Yes, Sarita, I am enough. I am as good as everyone else.
Yes, okay, yeah, this works because I had written down that I am doing my best. Would this work for it as well?
I am doing my best. No, it still would
So
not work,
it would
Sarita,
not work.
because uh, I am doing my best means, you know, this is all I'm capable of. I'm doing my best.
Okay.
You understand that? There is still a comparison going on. But I am as good as everyone else is a very positive affirmation of how good I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, El.
Okay. Can we say I release you instead of I let God in? Whatever works for you, Kiran. Of course you can say that. Of course you can say that. So do we look into these points every day? Oh, absolutely, Pavnita. That's what I said. Every day you look into these points. Make this your daily exercise every day for 5 minutes for many years to come. What about the physical abuse, the cutting and the slashing? Thank you, Shanaz. That was an excellent question. Sometimes the guilt and the shame is so acute. The burden is so acute, and the pain that this burden causes is something that the person cannot live with. That person whose emotional pain is so loud, that person needs something else that might be even louder. Right? So this emotional pain that comes from guilt and shame is shouting out to this person, you are horrible, you are useless, you are worthless, you are nothing, why don't you die? All of these things are being shouted out in this person's head and mind and heart space. In order to run away from this inner pain, the person needs something very, very big to divert attention from that emotional pain. And that's something very, very big, is in physically cutting yourself, physically causing harm to yourself, so that your attention then turns to that cut, to that bruise, to that healing, to that bleeding. And for a short while, you are able to move away from that emotional pain. In the same light, food disorders, rather eating disorders like bulimia, are an absolute self-punishment measure. Refusing to allow your body to be nurtured, to be nourished, to be fed, because there is this huge self-punishment coming from guilt and shame. Can I use the same positive change every day? Sim, you have so many things that you have done in your life. Please look for something every day. You will be happily surprised to find that you have done so many things in your life to make positive changes. So don't stick to one. Say a few words about resentment. Resentment, Pooja, comes along with blame. They go hand in hand, right? Blame will not be free of resentment, and resentment cannot come up if there is no blame. So let's actually talk of blame, Pooja. When I am scared to take self-responsibility because I misunderstand, when I tell people to take responsibility for themselves, sometimes they just assume that I am telling them to take the blame. And that's not what I'm saying, because that's not the word that I have used, but in your head, you've heard it as blame. Self-responsibility, I'm repeating again, comes from a space of choosing transformation, comes from a place of acknowledging that you have the strength and the power to fundamentally change yourself as a human being. Blame comes from a point of weakness. Now, when I feel weak because I have done something for which I am burdened by guilt, or I am weakened by the shame that I feel, what happens is that I am unable to find the strength to face myself. Because I am so angry at myself, because I'm so ashamed with myself, because I feel so guilty, I need an outlet. And that outlet, a very convenient outlet, is blaming someone else.
Okay.
When I blame someone else, right, I feel for a short while, for a temporary period, I feel comfortable that, oh, I am not the one who is at fault, that person is at fault. I am hoping from that to stop feeling guilty, to stop feeling that shame. But actually, that doesn't happen. And when that doesn't happen, I start feeling resentful. I am resenting the fact that everything that I am doing to make myself feel comfortable is not working. I feel resentful. I either turn the resentment within or I turn it outwards. I hope that has explained resentment to you, Pooja. Sometimes I do things which feel okay, but everyone around makes you feel guilty. Thank you, Rashida, for that question. Remember what I said. You do not need someone else's approval. That is one of the lies that shame tells you. You need your own approval. Now, if your own approval, if your approval of yourself is either totally absent or is incomplete, Rashida, then the voices of others will enter your head. If your approval of yourself is 100%, whatever others say to make you feel guilty will not work. Rashida, believe me, this is true. And believe me, because my approval of myself is so 100%, and I do not allow some people to make me feel guilty as they wish I would feel, they get very angry with me. And that is fine. I am willing to live with their anger. I am not willing to live with anything less than 100% self-approval. Self-approval, Rashida, does not mean telling lies to myself, does not mean self-denial. It means looking myself in the face and honestly stating, yes, I have erred. No, I have not. I hope that answers your question. L, how does one heal the punishment after addictive behavior? Mayor, for that, I would, if there's any kind of substance abuse or addiction, I would urge that you go to a therapist, a qualified therapist. Yes, you can come to people like me who are spiritual mentors and we can support you. But there are therapists who are trained to deal with substance abuse and addictive behavior patterns. It's a slow process, it's a long process. In this process, not only is the therapist very important, but the family members and the friends of the person are very important as well. They have got to give that person the time and the space and the freedom to heal in their way. Once the addiction is understood and once that addiction has been healed, there will be no need to self-punish. So there will be no self-punishment left. If self-punishment is still present, it means that the healing is incomplete. And so that person needs to spend far more time with the therapist. How do we stop someone from substance abuse without making them feel guilty? The person is anyway feeling guilty. I completely agree with you, Kiran. A tough one, Kiran. A very tough question for the loved ones of the person. First of all, you have to understand that substance abuse and addictions come from very, very deep emotional pain. Very deep. By you constantly telling the person, you're drinking, you're harming yourself, you are ruining your family life, you're being irresponsible, smoking will make you have cancer. All of these things that we think we are saying in order to help are actually making that person more guilty and more ashamed. If you find the courage, do not address the addiction at all. Instead, try to create a close bond with that person. And when you find that you're really close enough, you've taken the time to create that close bond, then gently, very, very, very gently, attempt to make the person talk of their inner pain, their inner emotional pain. Please remember, the person has the right to refuse to bond with you. The person has the right to refuse your help. The person has the right to reject your help. Don't feel bad about it. Don't be disappointed. Don't be angry. Instead, continue with your efforts. Make that person believe, and that belief can only come if you are authentic. Make that person believe with your words and with your actions that you love this person irrespective of the substance abuse, irrespective of the addiction. And of course, gently try to get help for that person, because please remember, even if you are a trained therapist yourself, if you are a family member, you are naturally caught in the emotionality of the situation. You need another objective therapist. If anyone is in complete denial mode, how can I help her? Swati, by being respectful of their need for denial. Please remember, just as this person is in denial mode now about something, you were in denial mode earlier, and you shall be in denial mode in the future as well. In fact, you might be in denial mode right now. The very fact is it's denial mode, so you wouldn't know. So please remember, just as we need our denial modes in order to help us gain our strength, someone else does as well. So instead of pushing the denial into their face, gently, authentically help them to see how much you love and respect them. Please understand, love is a meaningless word if there is no respect. Is there a particular kind of shame that you plan to come with in order to learn something? No, Rachna, no one plans to come with shame or guilt. No one. Yes, we might have shame and guilt from a past life, which we come to resolve and heal. We do not come to feel guilty. We do not ever choose at a soul level to be ashamed. We are in solidarity with family and conditioning, and we feel we are letting our parents down. That becomes the core issue. Does this also bring up denial, resentment, and self-harm? I don't think there is a single person in this world who does not feel this at some point in their life, that they are letting down some people, some persons in their family. When you go through that feeling, when you go through that guilt, when you feel that shame, ask yourself, what is the origin of my guilt? What is the origin of my shame? You will realize that more than likely, the origin lies in a disagreement between your value system, your belief system, and the value and belief system of your family members. When you have realized this, turn the lie of shame into the truth. I approve of myself. I approve and respect my value system. I approve and respect my belief system. I give myself the permission to disagree with my family's value system and belief system. If you can do that, there will be no denial, no guilt, and no resentment. You will accept their disappointment, but you will not be affected by their disappointment. How does one deal with the guilt that you could have done more when you lose a loved one? He would have been saved if I could have helped more. First of all, Lata, that is a lie. And not something that you have said a lie about. It's a lie that you're believing in. None of us can stop someone from passing over. Lata, that is their sole choice. S-O-U-L and S-O-L-E. That is their sole choice. I promise you, there is nothing that you could have or could not have done that would have stopped that person passing over. But yes, we do feel that deep sense of guilt sometimes when someone passes over. For example, when my mother passed over and I came to Bombay after being with her for so long, I came to Bombay for just about a week, and I had to rush back, and she passed over within 24 hours. I felt this deep sense of guilt that at my returning, when I could have stayed for 7 more days and been with her, I felt this deep sense of shame that I believed I was being selfish, that I wanted to return home to my children and my home. Of course, I worked with that guilt and that shame. It's the same process, Lata. You recognize the guilt, you recognize the shame, you truly and honestly recognize the reality. And then you start to release yourself from it by self-forgiveness, self-acceptance. I'm very sensitive by nature, suffered from asthma all my life. How can I come out of this stifling feeling? When you suffer from asthma, there are two aspects that you have to take into consideration. One is you do not allow, either you are a person who does not allow new ideas, new concepts to come in. You do not like change. You shut yourself to newness. Or you are the type of person who does not let go and you dwell in the past. Or the third is that you might be a combination of both. Now, both of these things literally strangulate you. You have to figure out why you are so fearful. First of all, I am going to disagree with you that you are sensitive by nature. Just because you're sensitive by nature does not make you asthmatic at all. A truly sensitive person is a very empowered person. So what you are is not sensitive. What you are is very, very scared. What you are is very rigid. Ask yourself where this fear lies. Where is it arising from? Why am I shutting myself to newness? And why am I not allowing myself to heal? Am I punishing myself for something? Is there guilt and shame that I have to look at? These are all deep questions that you will have to ask yourself and address in the many, many weeks to come. If you don't remember your childhood consciously, how do you come to the root cause or belief of your shame? Rachna, very good question. So when someone does not recall their childhood, and many, many people don't recall their childhood completely because a lot of things have been suppressed, I ask them to do the body exercise even more emphatically, where you look for the blocked energies of guilt and shame in your body, and you breathe into those areas and you say, I love you, I let go, I let God in. So once you do that, then even if you do not have those memories, remember those memories lie in your subconscious. Your words, your affirmations will help the subconscious energies to shift. Okay, so I think we've come to the end of all our questions. And thank you for being here with me. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Ellaeenah.
Thank you. And make yourself so important that your health, your happiness, your fulfillment is uppermost for you.